Hi guys, we're our Nights. I'm Ray.
I'm Julien.
And we are here to watch the second part of Hitler Oversimplified.
Yep.
I really found that first one interesting.
Yeah, so did I.
You know, there was some stuff there that I was definitely not aware of.
Yeah, I didn't know that he wiped his butt with the diploma.
The diploma.
I mean...
And he was such a rebel.
Yeah.
He picked up smoking when he was a kid.
Back then was different.
Yeah. I guess he didn't like his teacher much, for that matter. And his father was pro-Austria, was it?
Yeah, an Austrian official.
Even though most people assumed it as being German, he was all pro-German against whatever his father was thinking.
Yeah.
So like there was already a lot of anger being built up as he was a young kid, especially with his mother dying, his siblings dying, and so forth. Quite an interesting background and history lesson on Hitler's family tree.
Yeah.
For that matter.
Especially since they kept it in the family.
Oof, that was kind of weird.
Yep.
That was kind of... Well, anyway, this is Hitler Oversimplified Part 2. I do like this channel. The channel seems to have a lot of information on there from what I was seeing, and I like how I like their format.
Yeah.
I like the format of how they keep it informational at the same time.
They sprinkle in their jokes.
A little joke here, you know, it's a little funny. What I like the animation. Facts. The animation's funny too.
Oh, the animation's hilarious.
So let's get to it. Let's get Part 2, Hitler Oversimplified. Let's check this out.
Since Germany's military had to be reduced, Hitler could no longer remain a soldier after the war, but he kept working for the army as an informant. After the war, communists in Germany had attempted a revolution, and the government was worried about communism in general. So Hitler was tasked with infiltrating and reporting on any new political parties that could pose a communist threat.
Really?
And this I knew about.
The German Workers' Party threw up a whole bunch of red flags, so Hitler went along to one of their meetings, but found that they weren't communist at all. They were extreme right and shared many of his extreme beliefs, so he left the army and signed up to join the party. His fantastic speaking abilities impressed the party's leadership and supporters, and he very quickly rose to the top. He decided the party needed a makeover, so he renamed it to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short, and he gave it a new color scheme.
I didn't know that.
Yep, I knew that.
The Nazis weren't very specific on policy, but Hitler made extravagant promises to return Germany to its former glory by undoing the Treaty of Versailles and reuniting all ethnic Germans into one nation. He also said that only pure Aryan people should be allowed to be citizens, and that all Jews would lose their citizenship. These ideas were already common in extreme right politics, but what set the Nazis apart was Hitler himself, and they quickly became the leading party on the extreme right. Many of the political parties in Germany at the time had paramilitary wings, and the Nazis were no different. Hitler set up the very descriptive Whole Protection Detachment, later changed to the very delightful Gymnastic and Sports Division, and finally settling on the ominous Storm Detachment, or SA for short. Their job was to defend Nazi party meetings and intimidate political opponents, and they would frequently engage in battles with communists on the streets. Since the Allies had demanded a reduction in Germany's military size, many trained soldiers were left unemployed. They liked the Nazi ideology, and it was only natural for them to join the SA, which grew larger and larger over time. The new democratic government that formed...
Real quickly, few things. When Hitler was in the Communist Party, he was there, and he was also like, you know, he was becoming a big name for the Communist Party. Obviously, the Communist Party didn't like it at that time, so they actually kicked him out of the Communist Party, and that's when he reformed into the Nazi Party. Another thing, I know you can see like their uniforms, how it's like that brown with the... That's actually inspired from Benito Mussolini and his...
and his regiment?
A lot of what Hitler had, he was inspired by Benito Mussolini, and that's why towards the, when Italy started revolting against Mussolini, Hitler actually saved Mussolini from execution and brought him into Germany. Because he saw Mussolini as kind of like a teacher figure and like somebody he looked up to, and because all of his...
So he started it. Mussolini started fascism.
Yes. Another thing with Mussolini was Mussolini always referred to him as a star. He was always an actor. That's what he would say he was. And he would put on his shows, he would always practice behind the scenes and everything. And that's something also Hitler took and made his own. The only thing was different from Mussolini. Hitler didn't like people seeing him behind the scenes when he would mess up. And there's actually a story of one lady who actually saw him, and he freaked out when she saw him. Because he always wanted to have that picture of perfect. So
we had a comment on one of our videos by Catherine. Catherine, how you doing, Catherine?
Hi, Catherine.
And she mentioned that we shouldn't refer to or at least separate Nazis from German soldiers. Because there were two different things.
There were two different things.
There were two different things. Not try not to bunch them all together because for what they stood for.
It was the SS that was the Nazis.
Oh, the SA.
SA. And then it turns to SS.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go
just
back.
Some, a little bit deeper in.
All right, I'm loving this.
Yeah.
Grew larger and larger over time. The new democratic government that formed after World War I was pretty weak and ineffective. In order to pay reparations to the Allies, it started printing more money. The problem is that printing money doesn't actually give a country more money, it just makes money less valuable. So as the country printed more and more money, it became worth less and less, and the currency crashed. In 1919, $1 was worth about 4 German marks. By December 1923, $1 was equal to 4.2 trillion marks.
Jesus!
The price of bread rose to 200 billion marks. Banknotes became worthless. Unsurprisingly, in such an economic crisis, Germany struggled to pay the Allies. The French were pissed about this, so they occupied the Ruhr, an area full of factories, and took the economic output from the area as payment. They treated the German civilians badly, and in total, approximately 130 Germans were killed during the occupation. Germans were furious, and Hitler and the Nazis thought that now would be a great time to lead a revolution. In November 1923, inspired by something a certain bold Italian man did a year earlier, Hitler stormed a meeting at a beer hall and called for an uprising against the government. With his supporters, he marched on the streets of Munich, hoping the police would join his side. They did not. Hitler was put on trial for treason. He could have been sentenced to life, but the right-wing judges thought he was a pretty cool guy. Hitler knew the judges and knew that they would be lenient, so he took the opportunity to make impassioned speeches during the trial. And in the end, he was sentenced to just 5 years in prison, of which he only served 9 months. And when I say prison, it was more like a pleasant hotel stay where he had plenty of time to write a book. The whole affair was covered by the media nationwide, and it made Hitler famous. Hitler and his extreme message were now known throughout Germany, but the everyday Germans still didn't care much for him. In the 1928 election, the Nazis only won about 2% of the vote. Many were still intimidated by all the violence and the shouting and how unpolitician-like he was, but a new economic crisis would change all of that. To help Germany pay its reparations, America agreed to give it loans. In October 1929, the Wall Street crash happened, and America wanted its money back. The economic strain this put on an already struggling Germany was severe. Unemployment skyrocketed, poverty was widespread, and Germans were sick of it. It was clear that the newly formed democracy wasn't working. In the face of crisis, Germans began moving to the political extremes. If you were German and wanted change, your choices now were either the communists or the Nazis. Hitler claimed that he was the only one who could return Germany to its former glory. The Nazi Party used propaganda to make Hitler seem like a great and powerful man, and they gave the German people a scapegoat to blame for all their suffering. The promise of a single strong dictator was a breath of fresh air for Germans after years of failing democracy. Some bought into his extreme ideology. Some didn't agree with the racism, but were willing to vote for him anyway. Many didn't know much about politics at all, but just got caught up in the hype. Election after election, the Nazis became more and more popular, until in 1932, they became the biggest party.
Really quickly, during all these elections, what Hitler was doing was, you remember how in the part 1 he had a friend that actually wrote the biography of how when he was younger?
Yeah.
He was actually his head propagandist. He was the guy that was in charge of all the propaganda, and he would actually rally troops to attack other rallies to make that divide more. In Mein Kampf, also, Hitler denounced communist Jews, and he would blame a lot of Stalin and also the America. But between Stalin and America, I believe he thought that Stalin and communists were worse, if I remember correctly. Take it with a grain of salt. I haven't read it in a long time. So that's why he didn't start the fight with America yet. He started it with Russia. And obviously that went downhill.
Yeah.
So.
In the German parliament, Hitler came to truly believe that he was some sort of great, destined savior of Germany. He turned megalomaniac. He decided to run for president, and did surprisingly well, but still lost to the extremely popular World War I general, Paul von Hindenburg. Since he was now the leader of the biggest party though, he demanded President Hindenburg make him chancellor. But Hindenburg was reluctant, seeing that Hitler was clearly such a big racist. Industry leaders urged Hindenburg to give Hitler the chancellorship, fearing the rising support for communism, and leader of the Center Party von Papen, who had been secretly negotiating with Hitler, said to Hindenburg, "How about we make Hitler chancellor on the condition that I get to be vice-chancellor and most government jobs go to us moderate conservatives? That way, I'll get to keep my power. I mean, we'll get to keep our power and we'll control Hitler like he's our angry little puppet."
I do
What
remember
could
this.
possibly go wrong? As it turned out, everything. Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933, but he was not yet a dictator. In February, the German parliament building was set on fire. Historians still aren't sure who did it, and many suspect the Nazis did it themselves, but Hitler blamed the communists, and he convinced President Hindenburg to sign an emergency decree allowing him to imprison all communists and other political opponents. Communists and others were sent off to the first concentration camp in Dachau. At this time, the elderly President Hindenburg passed away, giving Hitler the perfect opportunity. He introduced a law to Parliament that would allow him to make all future laws and decisions entirely on his own. With his political opponents imprisoned and the SA intimidating others, Hitler's law passed. Just 2 months after becoming Chancellor, Hitler was now a dictator.
Well,
he still had
another
one
reason
problem.
Is,
the leader of the
The reason why Hitler had to take a strong arm approach to this was because even though he was popular amongst his people, he wasn't popular amongst the other people, and that's why he also made the whole entire, those people that were attacking at riots in order to silence people.
Separate them, yeah.
So he was compared a lot to Mussolini, but Mussolini was widely more popular than Hitler was, and that's why Hitler always took this strong arm approach in order to actually get things done.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Dictator. He still had one problem. The leader of the SA wanted the SA to take over the job of the regular German army, and the German army didn't like that idea. Hitler needed to maintain the support of his professionally trained German army, more so than his rough and rowdy SA. So one night in June 1934, he had Röhm and many other of his own SA officers rounded up and murdered. While he was at it, he took the opportunity to brutally settle some personal scores as well. Politicians who had disagreed with him in the past, reporters who had printed negative articles about him, one guy who did absolutely nothing, but they thought he was someone else. In some cases, even their families were murdered.
Jeez.
In total, up to 200 people were killed in what became known as the Night of the Long Knives.
It's like a mob hit.
Now satisfied that they wouldn't be replaced, pledged total allegiance to their new Führer, and Hitler's control was now absolute. Life in Germany changed violently. Freedom of the press, expression, and public assembly were suspended. Jews were initially branded and their businesses boycotted. And eventually, Hitler would go on to have 6 million Jewish men, women, and children killed in concentration camps.
This
Hundreds
was
of
really
thousands of
smart.
people were forced into
and even though it was horrible, it was smart the way he went about it. Because what he was doing was limiting the information that was going out to the mass, so that way he can keep them under his control. And he always had these little little groups that were controlling each of everything that was going out, in order to make sure that tensions were low and that there wasn't a civil uprising. And they were also making sure that the only propaganda that went out was towards a favorable
He controlled the narrative.
Yeah.
He controlled the narrative of the.
So he always made sure that there was nothing negative about the Nazi Party, and if it was something super. He didn't even let super small things go.
The whole thing about killing all those people, that's not like a mob hit. That all happened in one night.
It was the night of the long knives.
Jesus, dear Lord.
Hitler was an extreme
Hundreds of
planner.
thousands of people were forced into sterilization for physical and mental imperfections. The Hitler Youth became a way to brainwash the young. Boys were trained to fight and returned home from camp violent.
Getting the next generation ready.
Their purpose was to have many pure Aryan children, and they would sometimes return from camp pregnant.
When
their parents
from
were
Jojo
horrified, their children would threaten to turn them over to the Gestapo for standing in the way of Germany's greatness. The standard greeting changed, and you could be sent to a concentration camp for not using it. This way, it seemed like everyone was a Nazi supporter. If you dared oppose Hitler or speak out against him in any way, you also would be sent to a concentration camp. German nationalism captivated the young Adolf. Extreme ideology and anti-Semitism festered in him as a young man living a hard life on the streets. Germany's defeat in the First World War filled him with hatred and a thirst for vengeance. A political movement that treated him like a god, and hundreds of thousands looking up to him as their savior, made him a megalomaniac. And soon, his aggressive foreign policies would drag the world into a second tragic global conflict, otherwise known as...
Wow. That was amazing. And it changes my view on a couple of statements that I made previous. If any of you guys have seen our reaction to Band of Brothers, episode 9 where they find the
concentration camp,
I was really upset with the town nearby, seeing that they were not caring or whatever the heck it was. It seemed like I was saying they were not aware of it. I mean, I was not aware of the fear and the level of murder he was. Like, I knew he was intimidating. I didn't know the chokehold he had on the people of Germany.
Oh yeah, no.
I was not aware of that. To me it was like the way I saw it, the way I learned it. It seems that like they were all fanatics. That they all believe this way, and they're like
his smart psychological maneuvering made their own people believe that your neighbor could have been
a spy.
Yeah,
spying on you. When I saw everybody was like saying the salute, saying what they had to say.
Yeah,
going with the flow. I was not aware that. Wow, that was pretty intense. That was actually very helpful.
Something that I would have added to it though was how he ran the concentration camps. Because when he ran the concentration camps, he actually ran it like a business, which was horrible.
But you know what? That's just a sensitive topic, though.
That is.
Like, probably no one of them don't want to watch that. You know what I mean? That's probably like, we don't want to glorify any of that.
No, absolutely not.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so in any way of seeing what the details were behind that, I don't think anybody wants to see that.
Absolutely.
So. But anyway, guys, we really did. I enjoyed this very much in terms of the knowledge I received, plus the way it was laid out. I thought this was fantastic.
An amazing book that went over this that a friend of mine gifted me for my birthday, which he didn't know it was actually. He thought it was just an instruction manual. Is How to Be a Dictator. I don't remember the author right now, but it went over Hitler, it went over Mussolini, it went over Mao Zedong, it went over Stalin. All of them.
I'm almost sure on Netflix there's a show. It's like 10 parts. It's that whole material on that. And it might have been off that book.
It could have been.
Because it's all about the different dictator, and it said how to become a dictator, and it breaks everything down and how everybody else did it. So that it was very interesting. That was the show I didn't read the book, but the show was really interesting on Netflix. And it's the same title, How to Be a Dictator.
We should react to that then with these guys. Because they
haven't seen it. Yeah, we could probably do that. Well, guys, you want us to do that, let us know in the comments if you want us to react to that. It's really interesting.
Yep.
And it's also the different mindset that you have to play this role.
You know what we also should do? We should react to one of Hitler's actual speeches, just so we can get the feeling that he would invoke into the audience, and just see what he actually did that made all these people captivated with how he spoke. Well, if you guys want to see that, let us know. We'll try and find one, maybe, I guess.
If they have any.
Anyway,
guys, if you like what we're doing, please hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Please feel free to leave a comment. If you want us to do more Oversimplified or other videos like this, similar, because I know there's other websites that do other videos. Like there's a channel I know that breaks down actual combat.
Really?
That does that they can play major combat, and not just like World War II, but they do stuff on other like ancient battles that took place. Like what happened was Trinopoly, the Battle of Trinopoly. You might see stuff like Game of Thrones battles that took place. So I would eat that all up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, guys, I'm Ray.
I'm Julien.
Guys, take care. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are Knights.